Hey everybody! In this video we're going to be talking about facial proportions. Now I know you might be saying, hey, it's 2020, I can't see anyone's face anyway because everyone's wearing a mask. But, maybe in those rare glimmers when we're at home by ourselves, or maybe, seeing people on the internet, you might be able to see yours or someone else's entire face. And it's probably pretty awesome. So let's talk about proportions. The term proportions is kind of another word for a ratio or a fraction. So it's comparing parts of a whole. So maybe, 1/4 of something compared to the entirety of something. And that comes into play quite a bit with facial proportions. One tool that's going to be really, really helpful for you as you are mapping out proportions is a pencil. You don't need anything fancy, just any kind of pencil you have. This is going to act not only as your drawing utensil, but also as a measuring tool. So we're going to use our finger and kind of like measure certain parts of our face to see how big they are compared to other parts. So for example, I could measure like the length of my eye compared to the space in between my eyes, which we discover is the same. Crazy, right? So basically, I'm using my pencil to measure and see if there are like equal spaces between things, or perhaps I might see if I measure like the length of my eye compared to the length of my nose, maybe it's slightly bigger or smaller. So we're using it as a tool to figure out our own individual proportions. So when I draw out my proportions, it's really helpful to know that everything that I'm saying is a guideline. It's not always going to be 100% this is what it is, because everybody's face is different. Like my face is not the standard of everyone's face in the world, like I don't have the same size nose as everyone, or like my lips are not the same width or shape as everyone. So when I'm talking about my proportions, they're going to be a little bit different than other people. So that's why it's really, really important to measure. So use your pencil. You don't need to like get out a ruler and measure, millimeters or whatever. That's going to be a little excessive. You can take it down a notch. We're just working in generalities. So how about we get started? So to start with our proportions, I usually just kind of draw an egg shape, but some people kind of struggle with doing that right off the bat. So another way of creating the head shape is by starting with a circle and then kind of creating a jawline coming down from that. So that's another way of doing it. I usually like to hold my pencil in the sketch grip like this so that I draw a little more lightly as I'm doing this, since so much of it I'm going to be erasing. So the first things we want to do is divide the face in half, going up and down. Obviously we are bilateral, so we're symmetrical on either side, mostly. I mean, we can't say always. Like one of my eyebrows is higher than the other one. But otherwise, the second thing we want to do here is divide the head in half vertically. So I'm going to use my pencil and measure. And I mean, I've done this so many times that I'm pretty good at eyeballing it. So at this halfway point is where our eyes sit. So our eyes are really literally halfway from the top of our head and from the bottom of our face. So if you aren't believing me, it's way up here is the top of your head, right? That's not your hairline, right? It's the top of your head and your chin. Okay, so your eyes really are halfway between those things. So that's probably our most vital proportional division here. The next order of business would be to figure out where our eyes sit on the face. So I'm going to kind of clean up some of these marks here. All right, that'll do it. So we need to figure out where our eyes fall along this line. So our next proportional feature is that our face is 5 eye widths across. So what we'll do is we're going to take our pencil and we're going to measure from the tip of the pencil to our thumb. That's an eye width. If we pull it off to the side, you'll see the side of your face. Put it in the middle. In between your eyes is 1 eye width. There's another eye width and another eye width. That's 5. So we need to figure out 5 eye widths across. A lot of times people get confused because they have hair right here, like in front of their ears, which kind of obscures the side of the head just a little bit. So always remember that there is, skull back there behind your head just a little bit. So again, I've done this a lot, so I kind of can figure it out. I can eyeball it. You get it? Eyeball it. Such a great joke. Okay, so I'm measuring from the flat part of my pencil to my finger for this eye width. Make a little mark. So, since I do this a lot, I can kind of guess where my eye widths are and make adjustments based off of that. But I would say this step is pretty crucial to getting your face right, because I think probably one of the hardest things for us to do is, we always want to like jump right into creating our features right away, and then we realize like one eye is bigger than the other one, or it's not in the right spot. And that is really, really frustrating when you spend a long time on something and then it is not where it should be or not the right size. So doing this planning right away is going to help you. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3. Third one's right in the middle. That's very important. 4 and 5. So that's 5 eye widths wide. So we'd have our eyes kind of hanging out in the 2 and 4 spots, obviously. So there's our eyes. The sides of the head, remember, usually we have hair coming down here, so it'll kind of define the face just a little bit, so you can kind of see the hair covering part of the head. So it might look funky right now, but it will look better later. And then it's always important to note that you have 1 eye width between your eyes. Very important. Okay, so we have our eyes measured out and our placement for the eyes. Let's move on to the nose. So noses are really, all over the place, because some people have really small noses, some people have wide noses, some people have long noses, some people have short noses, but usually they are proportional to our faces. So if I were to measure mine, like how big is my nose? I'm going to measure from like right at my brow bone and take it down. It's about half from my brow bone to my chin. It's very close, at least. Okay. So if I were to compare it to maybe my eye line, like the middle of my eyes, it falls just under my lip. So we're looking at those different proportions and kind of figuring out which one's going to help us the most when we are measuring things out. So I'm just going to say, My eyes sit a little bit under my brow bone here. So if I were to divide this in half, measure that, bring it down just a tish. There we go. Okay. So roughly from your brow bone, if I were to take my glasses off, this might help. Now I'm blind, but you'll be able to see it better. So right where your brow sits here, that line to the bottom of your nose, down to your chin is half. All right, so above your eyes, a little bit, down to your chin. Okay, so we've got that line. I've got a cool unibrow on my drawing. That's okay. So that's our half. I'm going to point that out too. So here's another half. We're dividing this part of the face in half. This half is going in half. All right. Now to figure out a little bit more about the nose. So if I were to hold my pencil directly up from the edge of my nostril, it lines up with my tear duct, if you can see that. So that tells me that my nose is 1 eye width wide. So if I drop some lines straight down from my edges of my eyes, that will give me the width of my nose. Pretty snazzy. All right. Then from here, we need to figure out the mouth. So if I were to measure from the bottom of my nose, right at the base here, down, if I measure to the bottom of my lower lip, it's halfway. So not the middle of my mouth, but the bottom. So dividing this space in half gives us the bottom of the lower lip. So I'm going to finish my mouth here just a little bit so that we know this is the mark we're looking for. All right, so those are the basic in the face proportions. The next things we need to do is figure out the ears and the neck and the shoulders and all of that good stuff. So our ears, if you are looking straight ahead, line up with the bottom of your nose. So if we draw a line straight over, that should be where your earlobe is. Obviously, if your ears are stretched or if you're really old and have those awesome like saggy earlobes, that's not going to be the case, but most of the time it is. All right, then the top of your ear usually lines up with your eyebrow, unless if you're, making a face, right? But normally going across the top of your ear kind of lines up with your eyebrow. So that will be where our ears sit. So the bottom of the nose and the eyebrow are where our ears line up. Now, if we are to look at our neck, obviously if you're a weightlifter, this is not going to apply because your neck's going to get huge, right? But standard, very generalized neck proportions, it's going to be just slightly in from your jawline. So where your jaw falls, it's going to be just a little bit in. But before we can figure that out, where is our jawline at? That's really important. So usually the curve of your jaw, some of you might be more angular, some of you might be more rounded. The curve of your jaw usually lines up with the bottom of your lip. So if we were to take this bottom of the lip line and drag it across, that should roughly be where our jaw curves inwards towards our chin. You You might have more defined cheekbones, so that might curve in more. Some of you might have a rounder face. But then as we move upwards, you'll notice usually that your temples, so like kind of by your eyebrows towards your hairline, that tends to cut in a little bit. So if you have hair, obviously. If your head's shaved, if you're bald, then we're not going to really see these lines. It will be shaded a little bit because you have some flat planes on the side of your head, your temporal lobe area, right? So, however, if you do have hair, it goes in front of your ears, right? You got that going on. And then, I know I was talking about necks, but it's good to figure out the face shape too. Our hairline is varied drastically depending on the person. So this part is what really kind of helps define our personality, give us a likeness, is the hairline, the jawline. Those are not standard by any means. So you just want to kind of look at how big your forehead is, how much space you have between your eyebrows and your hairline. So for me, it's about the length from my eyebrow to my hairline. Gotta close one eye so I can see better. It's about my eyebrow to my nose. So if I go eyebrow to nose, my hairline is right about here. And I do not have big hair in the slightest. It barely comes off of my head. It is plastered to my head. It's very fine. So when I see the top of my head, I'm not going to add more hair on top of it. However, if you have voluminous hair or maybe really curly hair, it's going to, or thick hair, I guess. Yes, I have none of those things. Your hair is going to come off of your scalp or the top of your head a little bit more and give you a little more space there. So that is also another thing to keep in mind. Okay, back to necks. So sorry we got distracted by face shapes. Okay, so usually our necks tend to cut in right before our jawline. Obviously, if you lift weights, if you're more muscular in general, your neck is going to be bigger. Some of you might have a very thin neck. So this is all kind of dependent on your individual body type. The neck also does not go straight up and down, like there's a slope to it. We have these muscles right here that kind of come off of the neck. These are called the trapezius muscles, generally where we carry a lot of tension, right? So it doesn't make like a L shape, right? We've got muscles there, right? It's more of a gentle slope. If you are, I don't know, again, muscular, this is going to be more defined. If you are, or just really tense like me, it might stand out more, but otherwise you might have more of a curve here. So that too is dependent on your body type. Now, so we have our neck. Really look at your own neck. Like how long is it? How far does it come down before we start to see it move outwards towards your shoulders? I've got a pretty short neck, like everything else about me, pretty short. And now we want to look at our shoulders. So how big are our shoulders? How wide are they? They're definitely wider than our head. Yes, we would look very weird if they were not. So I need to hold my pencil out further so I can use it. I'm going to measure the height of my entire head, and I'm going to tip it sideways. There's one. Okay, and two. Your head is 2 head widths wide. So we're going to take one, bring it off, take the other. It's easier if I just do this, huh? Oh, bigger than I thought. Also, if you're a huncher like me, your shoulders are gonna get a little smaller, but you know, if we imagine you have good posture, they might not stick out so far. All right. So our shoulders kind of come out. If you are more muscular, they're going to be more defined. I've got very sad little slopey shoulders, so they aren't going to stick out so far. But they are 2 head widths wide. They're bigger than you think they are. All right. So these would be our basic proportions here. So the eyes are halfway down on the head. Our face is 5 eye widths across. Our nose is 1 eye width wide. It's about halfway from our brow bone to our chin. The bottom of our mouth is halfway from the bottom of our nose to our chin. Do you know what I forgot? How wide is the mouth? Let's figure it out. Okay, so we'll imagine we've got some nice eyes in here. Just a reminder that your pupil is directly in the center of the eye, or I should say in the center of the iris, because it's a hole, and holes don't really move around much. They're a hole. They do get bigger and smaller because it expands and contracts with the light. Watch my eye video, you'll learn all about it. But the corners of our mouth, if we were to line up with a pencil, they tend to fall roughly at the pupil. Or for me, my mouth is kind of small. It's right on the edge of the iris. So if we were to draw a line down from the pupil, that would be kind of the corners of our mouth. Like I said, my mouth is kind of small, so mine is just a little bit inside that mark. But there it is. Those are your proportions. So I'm going to do a really quick self-portrait to finish this off and actually look in the mirror. But one thing when you are drawing from life, drawing yourself, drawing from a photograph, look at what you're drawing. Don't look at your paper. The paper is not real. Your subject is real. So in this case, I'm real. Like what I'm seeing in the mirror behind this camera is real. This is all made up. So I need to spend time examining what's actually happening on my face. So as I'm finishing this, you want to really kind of notice how frequently I'm looking up as I'm drawing, because that is what's going to show you really how much time I spend looking at myself as I'm drawing. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up. We're going to go warp speed, super fast. I'll probably spend like half an hour on this. But all in all, let's get going. All right, well, that was about 30 minutes of sketching. Those are some basic facial proportions. Hopefully they are helpful for you. Thanks for watching and keep creating.